Yeah. Hello and welcome to our advising podcast. Today we have Dr. Karen Rubin, the director of the Advising Research Center for the College of Liberal and Creative Arts. Hello, Karen.
Hi.
Hi. I'm super excited to have you with us.
This is a cool idea. I love it.
Awesome. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about choosing the correct major. Now, why do you think it's important to choose a correct major, or how do we even approach that topic?
Well, it's interesting because I used to think there was a correct major for students or most students. And what I would invite students to think about is that life and college are not always linear. When I was an undergraduate, I think my mother wanted me to be a veterinarian. And since I didn't have any other ideas, I went along with that. And it was when I was in a lab where we were dissecting a seal, like a sea eel, a sea worm with teeth. And I thought, I don't love this. It doesn't inspire me. So sometimes you get little hints about the course you're pursuing not really being the best fit. So I said, fine, I'll reject this idea. I know I don't want to be a veterinarian. And I was in a community theater play. So I said, I will just change my major to theater. And I, in the middle of the semester, changed my major to theater for about 6 weeks. It was not the right fit for me either, but I hadn't investigated that. I didn't ask anyone. I didn't go talk to anyone. I just said, well, I like it, so I'll just change my major. But there was nothing about it I enjoyed. I did not like the classes. I did not like the instructors. I did not like the smell of the building. It was just not the right fit. But I then at that point knew what I didn't want and had no idea what would be right for me. That was incredibly, I had really kind of an identity crisis because it wasn't just about what is my major, but it was like, who am I? How am I going to contribute to this world? So if I was particularly driven, and so not to have a direction felt like my car had come off the cables, like I was directionless and I felt like a failure. Fortunately, however, and I also felt like I had a little bit of these theater classes and a little bit of these biology courses, and it to me looked like a mess and that I had ruined things and nobody would want me. And I was fortunate enough to be in a course with an instructor who looked at my courses and said, we love it. This is great. You have explored. This is just a beautiful, broad, classical education. This is what college used to be. You knew a little bit about a lot of things. And so the degree I ended up pursuing was what we would call liberal studies here at SF State. But it's a liberal arts degree, which is classically history, literature, philosophy, foreign languages, a nice broad mix of things. So it was serendipity that helped me find that when I was feeling quite ashamed of where I was and that I had no direction. There's a funny little story about I almost changed my major like a fourth time. I changed my major about 3 times. But a 4th time, I was in a government class, and the instructor was charismatic, and he was just kind. I liked him. And because I didn't know where I was going, I thought, okay, I'll be a political science major. So one day after class, I followed him back to his office, and I was feeling just really stressed, and I wanted him to tell me, yes, you should be a political science major. This is the right major for you. And he wasn't telling me that. He just kept asking me questions, and I kept getting frustrated. And I was starting to kind of get emotional. And he stopped a moment, and he took a pen, and on a piece of paper, he drew a straight line. And then under it, he drew like this scribbly line, all tangled. And he said, okay, so here's the problem. The problem is you thought it was supposed to be like this, straight. And he's sort of like linear, like one thing, and then the next thing. But it probably feels like the tangled line. And I'm like, yes, yes. He's like, hey, welcome to life. This is exactly how the whole rest of your life is going to go. And not knowing in that moment where you're headed is okay. In fact, if you get really good at that kind of ambiguity in your life, you're going to just weather the storm better. When every situation that comes to you that feels like today is just called, you don't know what major to be. But tomorrow it's going to be called, you don't know if your job's getting cut.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of skills that you build when faced with those things that feel stressful and feel adversarial or feel unclear to you, that there's growth inside it, and you have to just hang in there. And then finding your major is a thing that there are specific things you can do to find the right place.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great story, and I particularly love that it took another eye to help you kind of make sense of your degree, because I feel like I had a similar experience where I had taken several different classes in several different areas, and it wasn't until an advisor looked at it and said, "You're a performer. You took music and theater and Shakespeare and writing and creative writing, poetry, and so you're a performance person."
There was a theme. Yeah, theme emerged, and you were too close to it to see it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. So is there, I know we kind of reached this a little bit, but is there a timeline to choosing a major?
So this can add to stress. I mean, it certainly added to stress for me. When I look back at my transcripts, it turns out that all of my meltdown occurred kind of in my first year. And to me, it felt like it lasted quite a long time beyond that. But actually, there are studies, believe it or not, that seems counterintuitive, that show that students can change their major into their senior year and still graduate with what we would call on time. In certain circumstances, it's possible. And also, students who change their major once or even more than once are statistically more likely to graduate overall than students who never change their major. And what I imagine is happening there is that students who are, let's say, pursuing teaching because their mother was a teacher and her mother was a teacher, and that's just sort of since the age of 3 what everyone assumed you would do. And then you come to your classes and you're like, but I hate kids. Well, pursuing that line of study because you either consciously or subconsciously think you have to, the world is going to call you away from your degree. You're going to get messages of acceptance from some other area of your life. Maybe it's your job. You'll say, forget college. I feel like none of it's working. I'll go get further into my job, let's say. Or, maybe you get married and move, and then that breaks your momentum for school because it never felt like home to you anyway. So actually, the timeline is whenever the epiphany strikes you that you're on the wrong path. But the further along the path you are, the more necessary it is to be working very closely with an advisor who knows a little bit about a lot, who has that kind of higher level view of, like your advisor said to you, you're a performer. So that kind of advisor who can kind of look at the possibilities, even if they're in a different college or in a different, type of major.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So let's say that I've been working on a major for some time and I have this epiphany that it's not the best fit for me. What do you think I should do?
So so this speaks to the timing question as well. Within a given semester, you really need to have some thoughts about changes you might make at about the time you're registering for the next semester. So it doesn't have to be any sooner than that. If, for example, it's the start of a semester and you're in mostly general education courses, you don't really need to panic about changing your major right now before classes start. Because in many cases, the courses you're registered for will still be fine, even if your end goal is changing slightly. But it is important really to do a little bit of, I call it invest in yourself by researching. And you don't have to rush, but it is good to keep in mind that the next time you enroll for classes is about the time you would need to know which path might diverge significantly enough that you have to change your classes. So some of the things that I ask students to consider, first of all, is the universe telling you something like, I'm a performer? Has some person or some message pulled you either pushed you away from something or pulled you towards something else, that's really good. So in my case, when I wanted to be a theater major, I had something pushing me away and pulling me toward, but I then did not do any more research. So I didn't walk into the building, the theater building. I didn't try to meet with a faculty member. I didn't research the curriculum in the bulletin. So there are some basic things that I completely did not do for myself. And so I was not making decisions with all the data in front of me. So how could I make a good choice? And one of the things, so there's gathering like numbers and bulletins and data that's like hard data that you can look at. But then there's this thing that sounds a little bit hippie, and I tell students, now hold on, this part's really important. It's really listening to how you feel when engaging with either that discipline or the people who practice that discipline. So you have to go talk to people. And you can even go to faculty members. You don't have to know them, right? You have to be a little bit brave. And you have to make an appointment, maybe go to their office and say, I'm really exploring, I'm not sure what to do. I liked watching Time Team on TV, so kind of archaeology interests me, but I don't know, what's the difference between archaeology and anthropology, let's say? Or why, you could ask questions like, why do you love this? Let them sell to you. Or what kind of jobs can somebody do with a history degree? Those are really good ways of gathering clues about whether or not this will, notice, does the person you're speaking with seem impatient with your question, or do they seem like they don't have an answer, or you just don't click very well? That doesn't mean don't do that. That means keep asking questions. But this is going to sound really kind of funny. When I had the click, it was like, if you watch this show called Say Yes to the Dress, and they put on a dress and you're even thinking, okay, well, that's not really my jam, right? I don't like it. But there's this moment and the tears come and they say, I just feel good. Okay, I used to think that was not real. I thought that was just for TV. But it is real and it can happen. You can just feel like you're home. These people get you. They're your tribe. They consider questions the same way your brain thinks about the questions. So there is sometimes a click, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. And this is the other thing I would tell folks who are thinking about changing their majors. Sometimes doing what you really want to do in your graduate program will be the better goal. So I think we sometimes talk about, oh, you have to follow your passion. There have been many times I have said to students, all right, I appreciate the fact that you don't want to be, let's say, an American Sign Language English interpreting major. That's not what you want to do for your job. But you're so close to finishing this particular degree that you started with. It's one more semester, for example. Pursue your passion in a graduate degree or in a different job. So sometimes I would say at this point, what you'll want to do is kind of suck it up and finish this one out. Because that's also a really good life lesson, which is you're not likely to be pursuing your passion every minute of every day. And if your expectation is you should always be happy and passionate about what you're doing, that's going to be kind of a rocky life.
Okay. So thank you so much for that, Karen. That is actually all the time that we have. I really appreciated all of the insight that you brought to this topic. And to everyone listening, we do have a YouTube channel that is ARC at SFSU. Please make sure and look at our videos. And thank you.